Hello and welcome to TTV. I'm Charlie Christmas and you are watching the Big Small Business Show. Our special guest today is Amr Babood, CEO of OITE, Oman's leading trade fair company. Welcome to the show. Firstly, and I'm sure all my viewers are very curious to know, who is Amr Babood?
Sure. So I am Amr Babood, of course, and as you have mentioned, I'm currently the CEO of OITE. We are a trade fair organization here in Oman, and we've been around for over 35 years now. So we've been working very closely with the private sector, government and academia in Oman and previously outside of Oman as well. So that's kind of what my current role is. I've been involved with this organization since 2018. Before that, I had spent almost all of my life in the UK.
Wow.
Growing up in the UK when my dad had originally moved there in the 80s to study in the UK. So I studied there, I grew up there, I worked there as well before moving back to my home country, Oman.
Okay. So tell us, what was the motivation of setting up your company way back in 1984? Because things must have been incredibly different in Oman then than they are now.
Correct. So, of course, I wasn't around at that time, but the company was set up in 1984. Oman is currently a young country, so you can imagine how young it was back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very different place to what it is now. The motive at the time was to start to market Oman internationally because no one had known much about Oman at that time because it was kind of a little bit of a cut-off place at the time. It wasn't so interconnected with its neighboring countries or in the region. But suddenly in 1970, when Oman started to open up, it started to build its capacity, its industry, started opening up schools and hospitals and new roads. So it was starting to develop quite rapidly at the time.
Yeah.
So the first step was firstly to connect Oman within itself. So the capital Muscat with Salalah, with the surrounding areas, for people to get to know what is happening in the country, what are the businesses that are around, how can I network with these businesses, how can I work with the government. So we were there as a company to get all these people together in one place, get to know each other, and obviously explore opportunities. And at the same time, to bring in international investors, companies into Oman. And what has happened since then has been amazing because some of these companies who have come to Oman at the first time through some of our trade fairs have now become leading organizations within the country. So we feel very proud to have been part of that journey and very proud to have supported Oman in its journey to where it is today.
So you came from the UK to Oman in 2018?
Correct.
And did you have any prior experience? Obviously, you've come straight into a very high position, or in fact, the top position within your company. What experience did you have to bring to the role, if any?
Sure. So I have never had the experience of leading a company as such. I have had various jobs beforehand. My background, you might not know this, but I was previously a lawyer in London.
I did not know that.
That was my original background. Having graduated with a degree in economics, I then went on to do a degree in law. So I worked for around 5 years in law, in commercial law. So I'd qualified as a solicitor in London. And that's when I started to realize that I started to enjoy the commercial part of the legal industry more than I did the actual traditional hardcore law.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was really into business. And that kind of led me to explore other opportunities. When I moved to Oman at the time, I had an open mind of seeing, let me see where this may lead me, what opportunities are in the country. I joined OITE initially in the as a legal consultant when I first joined the company, looking over contracts, advising with negotiations and agreements. But then what happened at the time was that the previous managing director was on his way out of the company. And I had that opportunity then to become the head of the organization. So although I hadn't had much experience in actually leading a company, I had some experience in working in the legal background, advising kind of the senior leadership teams of those companies. And that did give me some experience. But I'd say it took me around 2 years in the CEO position to really start to feel like I now get what it means to be a CEO and start to add value back. Yeah.
So it's 2018. You come from the UK to Oman into this high-profile position. You're in the position for 2 years, I'm sure doing incredibly well, and then suddenly COVID hits and everything is thrown into the air. What challenges did that present to you, and what changes in your organization did you need to make in order to withstand that terrible time that we all went through?
So COVID was, I think, probably the biggest shock that any of us in our lifetimes will probably go through.
No, I agree.
We were in a really good position when COVID hit. Obviously, I had joined the company. We started to build our vision and our strategy, which was to grow the company and also move into opening offices potentially internationally. So we were in a very good position, and we'd agreed on a vision, and the whole team was ready to take on this next challenge. When COVID hit in Oman in around February, March 2020, I remember it very clearly, and it was just before we had 2 of our major exhibitions taking place, which was COMEX and
Oh,
GetX.
yes. Oh, gosh, yes.
Yes. So everything was in place. Everything was prepared. Everyone was very excited. And unfortunately, the news came that, of course,
we had to shut down.
We had to shut down the whole country and the whole world.
Yes, yes.
So that was a big shock. And honestly, there was no kind of experience, I think, that anyone could have had at the time to have known what to do next. So this was a challenge that no one had expected, and no one knew what was the right path to go, or if there was any path at all.
Yeah.
So we would have meetings and discussions for many months, trying to understand what was next. And the immediate challenge that we had, firstly, was that big events, which our clients had paid a lot for, were no longer happening. How do we then, provide them with an alternative?
Yes.
Or how do we refund their money? Which was very difficult, because the way that events work is sometimes seasonal. It's not like a product that you sell on a day-to-day basis. So as a company, we relied on that revenue to have invested in our marketing strategy to build the event. So I think it was all about being open-minded, having strong communication with, firstly, your employees, with all the stakeholders in your business, and with your clients, and with society at large, letting them know that right now it's impossible to have a solid answer, because we're still waiting on things which are not within our control or your control. So I think by having that open communication and building trust with people in a difficult time, that definitely gave us some advantage and explains for some reason why we were able to survive very, very difficult 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the challenges were great. I mean, the phones just stopped calling. There was no business at all, because we were not able to conduct our business.
No.
So we started to have to think outside of the box, exploring what opportunities there were. And one of the opportunities at the time were virtual exhibitions, which, of course, we were excited about, but we also understood that they were limited in their scope, because humans are not designed to carry out so much of their work virtually.
Yes.
We have to network, we have to meet face to face. So we tried a few of these events, and they did manage to keep some kind of cash flow going to allow us to meet our financial commitments. Of course, we then had to restructure our financial arrangements with some of the lenders at the time who were lending us money, the banks or investors, to give us more time to be able to survive, because finance is kind of the key pillar in the survival of any business. So virtual events are what kept us going, but at the same time, having a second stream of revenue, which was the second part of our business, which is the market research side.
Okay.
So we kind of diverted some of our human resources from the trade fair side into the research side to try to win new business and new clients. That to some extent worked and managed to keep us afloat throughout the 2 years of COVID. When the main restrictions on COVID finally ended in just a few months back, which was great news for everyone, and opened up new hope for the future. By that point, things were very, very tough, and I believe that if things had carried on in the way it was, with restrictions in place and business not being able to function normally, we might have had to take some.
Yeah, it's very hard to recover from that.
Very hard to recover. Very hard to recover. And I think we were lucky that we were able to. And also, there's many lessons that we have learned as well from the situation on how to be kind of a more lean and more flexible organization.
So would you say that was kind of like a silver lining, where you've learned to adapt and change things within the organization to the situation around you?
Yes, I think you could say that to an extent. I think no one can ever be fully prepared for something such as COVID, such as a pandemic. I think countries will be better prepared in the future. Now we've gone through what has happened, but you have to remember that this pandemic, the effect of it has been greater than even the Great Depression, or even the financial crisis that happened a few decades ago. But it has taught us things such as how to be more adaptable, how to not stick so hard to your targets, because targets are continuously shifting. Objectives are continuously shifting. And also, how can you be more resilient so you don't focus on just one or two areas of your business, and try to kind of grow and invest more in perhaps smaller or alternative routes of bringing in revenue to your company, which could then help you in the future.
Yeah. So how would you describe your company's success so far?
Okay, so the way that we divide our successes is that we have, of course, longer term achievements, which we are aiming for, mid-term and short term. There are successes that we have every day, for example. For example, is when we can perhaps bring in a new partner or new client into our business. There are also failures, which are perhaps someone who has been your client for over 35 years, perhaps is not so interested to continue with you anymore.
Yeah.
So there are successes and failures every day. And I think measuring success can be very difficult, because there is the financial success. There are other ways of success. For example, what is the reputation of your business? What is the trustworthiness of your business? Would your clients continue to work with you in the long term? What is the happiness of your staff? So I would say that overall, given the situation of COVID and that our survival, I think surviving COVID could potentially be something which I always look back on as kind of my greatest achievement.
Yeah.
But I think it's the success of keeping our company intact, keeping our team intact, and the kind of continuation of some of our major trade fairs, which have been around for 35 years. If those had ended, it would have been really, really sad news. We have a long way to go. Like I mentioned, we have aims to go international. COVID has slowed us down by 3 years, because this is something we would have wanted to do back in 2020, which I think we might not be able to achieve until hopefully 2023, 24.
Yes, so next year. Yeah.
Next year. So that has definitely put us back. But I think we have achieved success in some areas, and areas where we haven't achieved success, maybe not fully our fault, but we have definitely learned many things from that.
Yeah. So going back now to 1984, when the company first started, how long did it take for your company to start turning over a profit?
Sure.
So I think that there's in today's market, and with all of the SMEs coming through, particularly now, we are seeing a lot of SMEs breaking into the Omani market.
Yes.
People forget to budget in a loss. You know, it's difficult to be successful straight away within your first year. So you have to sort of take that into account and budget for that. So what would your advice be, and how was it for you when you started, or when your father started the business those years ago?
So from what I understand, as from the company's perspective, OITE back in 1984, trade fairs were a new concept. There had been trade fairs have been around for hundreds of years, and actually the first trade fair was in Alexandra Palace in London a long time ago. But to Oman it was very new. There had been you can call them business or business gatherings, which were unorganized trade fairs. So to be able to sell this concept at the time was difficult for the company, because people maybe didn't fully understand the purpose, the objective, and what would be the return. So it did take the company a few years, at least 2 to 3 years, to start to turn a profit from the work that they were doing.
So did the company have a contingency plan ready for that?
Yes, correct. So at the time, what had been decided with the original investors of the company was that we're launching a new product, we're launching a new service to the country. It may work, it might not work. So let's have a vision where we can see for the next few years that we're able to financially survive, and then decide whether the business would be worth continuing. So when it got to the period of 2 to 3 years, and they started to notice that, okay, the profit now is starting to come in, we're able to cover the cost, make a profit, pay back the original investors. People are starting to really understand trade fairs and the value of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Because even trade fairs as a product, it takes you a few editions to start to see the benefit of that work. So there was definitely a contingency plan, and this is something that we're going through now, post-COVID. Our work is back, not to the level it was pre-COVID. We are achieving some success, but we are ready to have that backup plan for at least the next 2 years to get us through the difficult period, at which point, hopefully, we can more than pay back what has been put in financially.
So now we're going to the million-dollar question. What is unique about OITE, and what sets you apart from everyone else?
So I'll answer that question from what I feel and think about OITE, and also the feedback I get from other people. I did a calculation recently where I calculated that the average age of the team members within OITE is 26 years old.
Really?
It's a very, very young company, very young company. So I think that is something very special we have within our company.
Is there a reason for that?
I'd say the reason is that as a company, we've always liked to involve youth in our company, because as we know, they are usually the most up-to-date, most energetic, and also they love working in trade fairs, because trade fairs are very fun
and
to
dynamic,
work and dynamic, and they require a lot of energy.
Yes.
So that's something I think which has really helped our organization by having the youth involved. And Oman is also taking that step, by the way, kind of trying to involve and focus more on the youth, because there's so much opportunity and hope that they can bring to the country. But at the same time, having key experienced people within the organizations who have been here throughout over the last 20 years, 25 years, who can bring in that experience. So it's a balance, I think, of having youth and experience, and at the same time, having a mix of backgrounds of people. So we have a mix of backgrounds from people from different countries, from Oman and beyond. So I think it's the people in OITE that makes us unique. and a reason why we get on really, really well with our partners and our clients as well.
Excellent. What would be your take-home advice for our viewers who are starting their SMEs or thinking about starting a business? What would you say to them? What would you advise them to do? What's important when you start up a new business?
For sure. So I think starting up a new business, you really have to be prepared. Starting up a new business is one of the biggest things you will do in your lifetime. You have to be prepared, you have to be committed to what you're starting off to do, because it could go very well, it might not go so well, so you have to be prepared for all outcomes. Patience is key, not just for yourself, but even for those around you. I think starting up your own business by yourself is very, very difficult. It's the support network that you have around you to be able to get you through the difficult times, be able to give you advice. They say that, 2 minds is better than 1, but I think 10 minds or even more is something that you definitely
sky's the limit. Yeah, for sure.
The sky is the limit. The more support you can get, the better. Things don't happen overnight. Try to give yourself small objectives, successes throughout that period to keep you motivated. But overall, there's no one specific thing that worked for me. Obviously, I'm passionate about what I do. And I didn't learn that passion until later on because I was in a different sector, and moving to this sector, it just happened. I was kind of luck, I guess you can say. But I think you have to prepare yourself to get that luck. So put yourself in the right position. Try to, obviously you might be convinced about your product or service, but try to see if others are also convinced, and see how you can be open-minded and work with as many people as possible. Have open communication with your staff and employees, because they are the ones who are really going to be driving your business forward. And I think there is no secret to success. Everything is different for everyone, depending on the time and place. So I think also knowing sometimes, people always say never give up, but there are certain times when a particular initiative, for example, is just not working, and you have to know when to give that up, to focus your time and energy on the areas which are perhaps more successful.
Yeah.
So there's no particular advice I can give, but I think people will hopefully generally find their own path to success.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining myself and our viewers on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here.
It's been a pleasure to be here, and really excited to be part of this initiative which you're launching. I always try to read and learn from other people, so I think there's a lot of new ideas and thoughts that will benefit your audience with all the great speakers that you're looking to have as part of this show.
Thank you, and best of luck with everything moving forward. You've got a very exciting few years ahead of you, so best of luck with that.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Same to you.
Thank you for joining us. See you next week. Join us on the Big Small Business Show every Sunday at 8 p.m. on TTV.